it true you want to break up now? Why? I mean, what's going to be the future for grunge rock and things?
Steve's going back to school, so and Dan's gonna play drums for Nirvana. So me and Mark are just gonna, I don't know, something might come along. There'll be other bands in Seattle still. There's still good bands there.
I'm sure I'll play music of some sort, you know, for all my life, but I've never wanted to be like a rock star or like a professional musician, really. I just always played in bad punk rock bands, and that's what I intend to keep doing. We're not really saying we're breaking up, because you never know. We might be back together, you know, at some point.
You know, at the time when the band was, you know, doing really, really well, Steve decided that he wanted to go back to school.
You know, when the band started, I mean, our initial thing was like, we're going to be lucky to get a single out. We accomplished that. At the time, it seemed like most bands had 3 good years in them. Steve was, more than anybody else, I think, kind of really married to that idea. And so I think he probably just thought like, well, you know, this is the thing that I'm doing at this point in my life, and I'm going to eventually go back to school and get that anthropology degree and go become a professor somewhere or something. I don't know.
I still could not imagine music being, you know, a living. I don't think I wanted it really, and I think I was in denial that it could have been. I know I didn't like the record very much. Just wanted to distance ourselves from what was becoming known as the grunge thing in Seattle.
I had run into the girlfriends of Kurt and Chris at a show, and they had told me Nirvana was looking for a new drummer. Chad wasn't going to be in the band anymore. I'm like, well, there's, you know, I'm not going to be doing anything for a while. Let them know that I'd, you know, like to play with them, and if they're interested. I had played a show with them at the Motorsports International Garage. It was a big show for them in town. There was supposed to be a photo shoot the next day after that show for the cover of Sounds magazine. I went to Tacoma and did the photo shoot, and then they took off and went to talk to labels. When they got back from that, Kurt gave me a call, and he's like, it looks like we're going to sign to Geffen. And I'm like, yeah, all right, you know. And it's like, I'm like, so what's happened with that English tour? He's like, oh yeah, that's why I'm calling, you know. It's like, we got another drummer. I'm like, oh. Turned out to be, of course, Dave, who was at the show that I had played, who was at the photo session that I did with those guys. They all knew full well at the time that I was not going to be in the band, but didn't say anything. The great thing that happened after the Nirvana thing didn't work out is I ended up playing drums for the Screaming Trees for like almost a year or half a year or something, and that was great.
You know, we were still practicing and you know, writing songs.
You know, I'm like, Steve, what the fuck's going on? You know, what do you got? What's, you know, the Trees want to go in and record a new record, and they want to continue touring and stuff, and, you know, what's up? And he's like, I think we should tour. And I'm like, all right. So, I mean, that was an easy choice for me to go back to Mudhoney. Energy and the vibe and stuff, it just couldn't beat it. I stopped playing with the Trees, and, you know, of course, they went on to make, you know, one of their most successful records of all time as well. Apparently, if I join a band but don't play on their record, they're going to go off and maybe have, you know, some good success. So.
Well, for Sub Pop, 1991 was the make or break year, and I believe it was the early summer of 91 that John and I basically laid off everybody. We'd come in the office and pack up a box of records to ship to Japan and maybe get a couple $100. And we were really on our last legs when Every Good Boy Deserves Fudge came out. If it wasn't for that release, there's a very good chance that, you know, we would have folded the company. Sub Pop has always been very grateful to Mudhoney for staying with us like they did.
Every Good Boy Deserves Fudge, to me, may be the defining work that Mudhoney has released. And I know I'm not alone in that thought. That record married their wit, their songwriting skills, but there was a level of sophistication but equal parts sophistication and dinge. It's another word for grunge. And just fucking great jams.
At that time, selling 100,000 albums on an indie label was, that didn't happen too often. That was like going platinum. And we were very proud of the record because it was such an awesome disc.
They can make it sound so nice. Everybody's got a pride.
I think it's a really good record, and it was a good change of direction. You know, at that time I was doing a lot more dope, and I think Steve definitely picked up the slack and kind of drove that record.
I guess it kind of gets tagged more of a garage punk kind of record. We'd stripped things down and simplified things a little bit. Also because it was a pretty crude 8-track studio at the time. If Mark had the farfisa on the song, there couldn't be a second guitar.
But it wasn't enough for the company to be in the black.
They had an enormous amount of patience with us, because even though we knew what we were doing or what we were trying to do, those guys didn't sign on to uphold that. You know, they were our friends, and they believed in us, and they believed in the vision of the label to a certain degree. But, you know, they had their own interests to manage and maintain.
You know, leaving Sub Pop was rough. It wasn't something that I'm proud of or happy about doing. It just seemed really unloyal to me to leave.
It was getting uncomfortable, and we started worrying that, you know, they were going to go out of business owing us, you know, $75,000 or something, and it was really going to like destroy any kind of friendships. I think us leaving, you know, kind of ruined the friendships anyway, kind of, you know, but I don't think there's any way around it.
What ended up happening was it got the company to a point where it could survive just a little bit longer, and then Nevermind happened. And it ended up being Nevermind that kind of pushed the company really into a better financial place where they could kind of regroup and figure out what the plan was.
If we had known that Sub Pop was going to be kept afloat by Nirvana signing to a major label, I don't think we would have left the label. You know, we probably would have just kind of like weathered the storm and waited till that happened. But of course we didn't know that was going to happen. Sub Pop was distributed at the time by a record label in New York called Caroline Records. So we thought, well, maybe we'll just cut out the middleman. President of the label came out, his name was Keith something or other. I wish I could totally remember the name, just because people like this need to have their names, they need to be called out, right? He took